Welcome to the Love the Star podcast. I'm Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 through the Fan in Dallas, joined as always by former NFL scout Brian Broaddus. He is a Super Bowl winner. He is also the co-host of the G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105 through the Fan in Dallas. And he is also the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys radio network. Brian Broaddus, how are you doing today?
Doing excellent, Robert. Thank you very much for asking.
Are you starting to believe in the Cowboys' magic, sitting at 6-8, all the odds against them with these 3 games left? Are you starting to believe? Because I'm seeing a ton of that belief in my Twitter mentions where people are angry with me for not thinking that they're going to be in the postseason and win it all.
Yeah, I don't. When their quarterback went down, I felt like that was the last straw, if you want to say. I mean, this season's not been very good. They've lost some games. He absolutely would love to be playing New Orleans, Atlanta, those teams right now instead of when you played them. You were probably going to get beat by the Ravens. You were probably going to get beat by the Eagles. But when Dak Prescott went down, I will say this. I think the defense is playing better. It took them a while, but they figured out running the ball with Rico Dowdle is the right way to go. They've got a healthy right guard. The combination of that, Steele playing better. They're getting point of attack blocking from Schoonmaker and Ferguson and Spanford. There's a lot of things going in the right direction. Mike Zimmer's got this group playing pretty well. He's got matchups he is pretty favorable with. This will be a little bit of a different challenge for him this week. He's really going to have to defend the field more horizontally this week than vertically. Just because I feel like that with Baker Mayfield, what he's going to do is he's going to try and throw the ball underneath, run after catch. Air yards are minimum for this guy, but the guy's thrown for a lot of yards. His receivers, his backs do a really, really good job. But yeah, the belief, this starts the gauntlet of the teams, the 3 playoff teams you're dealing with, and I think it'll be difficult to win these games without your starting quarterback.
Yeah, and I want to kind of just, we'll have a chance to dive in a little more. Brian's already watched Tampa Bay's offense. I'm going to get started on the defense later today, and we'll have a good look at what Tampa looks like later in this week. But I kind of want to touch on this weird transition point that the Cowboys seem to be in right now, where you're trying to figure out how much of this can you carry over into next year, how much of this is real, how much of this should you be building on, how much of this should you feel good about to close the season. So I got a few different broad-based questions that we're going to touch on today before we get into the Love the Star mailbag. Before we do, I want to get your thoughts on one thing specifically, Brian. Jerry Jones came on with us on 105 through the Fan on Tuesday, and right out of the gate went to bat without any setup or anything else, went to bat for how great a job Mike Zimmer's done, and continued to repeat that throughout the interview. And I had asked him at one point, I said, do you view the futures of Mike McCarthy and Mike Zimmer as being tied together, or are you going to view them separately? And he said, in a way, I do. And talked about how he gives them both high grades and different things like that. When you hear that kind of an answer from Jerry Jones, is that Jerry's just giving you standard answers, or Jerry's just kind of talking generically? Or do you think he's saying, no, these two are, if Mike McCarthy's back, Mike Zimmer's back. If Mike Zimmer's back, Mike McCarthy's back, and there will be no separation. And if I'm going to move on, I'm going to blow up this whole thing.
I think Mike Zimmer comes back if Mike McCarthy's the coach. If Mike McCarthy's not the coach, Mike Zimmer will come back potentially if there's an offensive coach that's hired as the head coach. Mike Zimmer likely not to come back if a defensive coach is hired. So that's kind of how I look at this. If they go out and say you get Mike Vrabel, and Mike Vrabel sounds like he is on the wish list of several teams around the league that are going to be looking for coaches. If that's the case, I think that Mike Vrabel will have an idea of maybe a defensive coach, defensive guys he wants to bring in, and I think that would be the end of Mike Zimmer. If an offensive coach is interviewed, we could see the general manager in the interview say, listen, tell me who your defensive coordinator is you're planning to bring in. And if the defensive coordinator comes up with a name, and the next question I would be, if I was Jerry or Stephen Jones, I would ask, have you taken a look at our team defensively and seen Mike Zimmer? I would make that candidate explain to me potentially why. Not forcing him to hire Mike Zimmer. I'm asking him what he saw when he evaluated our team. And most of these guys that do interviews are going to know your team. There are a lot of guys that are lining up for these gigs, are going to soon to be lining up for these gigs, that are going to their pro personnel guys within the building, and they're saying, listen, give me a scouting report on the Chicago Bears. Give me a scouting report on the Dallas Cowboys. Give me a scouting report on the New York Jets. And so then you have an idea when you go in. Now, you have to have somebody you really, really trust, because you don't want to get it out there that you're already thinking about leaving, and but it's the way the NFL operates.
Absolutely.
You go in, 2 or 3 guys or gals help you with a breakdown of, you're putting together a notebook. Andy Reid, he got this from Mike Holmgren, who got this from Bill Walsh. These are the types of things. You come in with an idea, a program. You come in with the thought of, like, these are my coaches. You don't want any stone not to be unturned. And so that's why you get what you get, and I feel like that these coaches, it's up to Jerry and Steven to, if they like Mike Zimmer enough, to be able to tell the potential head coach, the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, that, listen, take a look at Mike Zimmer and give me a reason why you wouldn't hire Mike Zimmer.
Yeah.
And then if the coach has a better, say if Ben Johnson gets the opportunity, and Ben Johnson knows that he can deliver Robert Saleh as his defensive coordinator. Now you're in a mode of like, okay, Ben Johnson goes, hey, Jerry, Steven, these are my coaches. My defensive coordinator is going to be Robert Saleh. Okay. Do you have any objection to Mike Zimmer? Yeah, I've got Robert Saleh because. Okay, now it's a closed deal. I just feel like that's Mike Zimmer's best opportunity of staying with the program, are with a Mike McCarthy extension or a offensive coach that gets a recommendation from the general manager. Would you consider the guy that's currently here?
This would have sounded insane several weeks ago when there were struggles, but given how strong Jerry came out talking about Mike Zimmer and how I think everybody believes that he's done a pretty good job coaching in the second half of the season, have we considered enough the possibility of the Joneses just saying, why not Zimmer as the replacement for McCarthy?
I think there's always a consideration for that. If you feel good enough about, say, maybe Al Harris is your next Aaron Glenn, that kind of guy, if you want to be, we'll see if, these head coaches, does Mike want to be the head coach and also be the primary defensive coordinator? I kind of feel like that maybe he has an idea. Some guys, he's got guys on staff. What's our linebacker coach that he's the
Scott McCurley.
No, it's not the linebacker coach. God, I hate when I do this. The guy was with him in Cincinnati. And,
Paul Gunther.
Paul Gunther, yeah. Sorry about that, Paul. I didn't mean to forget your name there. But Paul Gunther, maybe Paul Gunther, if Mike Zimmer's the head coach, Paul Gunther becomes the defensive coordinator. That very well, I think, could happen here. You have to determine, though, me personally, I'm looking at the next coach that can take advantage of Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb for the next 4 years. Not hiring you unless you can convince me of that. I mean, you're probably going to be married to Micah Parsons too. Is another one. But,
yeah.
This is a situation that you're in right now that you have to convince me that you can help Dak Prescott. I'm not hiring you unless you tell me you can help Dak Prescott. And I don't need the lip service of, I watched all your tape while I was in a barn in Wisconsin, and then, I want real proof, real plan, real scheme, real OC, real offensive line coach. I want a lot of things. I do not want to go through this again but I do know for the next 4 years I have Dak Prescott and I have CeeDee Lamb, and I'm also going to have Micah Parsons. I've got a lot of young offensive linemen I'm going to need to deal with. I've got potentially a young running back. Well, young in the way of NFL years because
not a lot of tread off the tires.
Not a lot of tread off the tires. And the potential is I'm going to have to retool this thing at wide receiver. I'm going to maybe I found a couple of tight ends with Schoonmaker and Spanford. We'll see what happens with Ferguson. But this interview is not just over a glass of Johnny Walker Blue and let's sign the papers and go to work. This is extensive. I am going to get this guy because, and I think if I go and get this or interview this guy and he doesn't tell me everything that I just asked for, then I'm not interested. But Mike Zimmer, familiarity with the program, Super Bowl winning staff member of the Dallas Cowboys, has a history with the Joneses. Now, the Joneses might just agree to this as well, because is Mike Zimmer going to get in the way of how they operate in personnel?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah.
I was with Mike there. Mike had a lot of say in drafting Roy Williams back in the day. So Mike will have say. Every head coach has say. People like Broadus, that's not true. It's all Jerry. No. Mike McCarthy even came out and admitted he had more say here than he did with Ted Thompson in Green Bay in personnel. Yeah. Trust me, head coach has say in the direction this thing goes when it comes to personnel. Don't believe any other word. That's the God's honest truth. I lived it my years in Dallas. So are the Joneses interesting in having a guy that's going to try and come in? And this is why I thought Belichick would not be a really good fit. Because Belichick, what is he doing at North Carolina? He's got Mike Lombardi. They're going to run a plan. They're going to use the Patriot way, the combination of the Patriot way, the 49er way that Bill Walsh and Mike Lombardi work together. That's what they're going to do. The Patriot way does not work in Dallas when Stephen Jones and Will McClay are not interested in doing the Patriot way. Are they interested in situations of possible opinions and yeah, sure. But I think it's going to be, and Bobby, I'm going to ask you this question because I've been studying this a little bit and why Dallas does what they do. And I'm starting to come to a little bit of a realization that Dallas is going to be very top heavy with some of their top players. But what they're doing is they're getting positional value. They're getting positional value of certain players. They've got $1.1 million in Brock Hoffman. They've got $1.2 million Brock Hoffman's a $900,000 player. Mm-hmm. They've got $1.1 million in Lawson. They've got $1.2 million in the running back. These players, if you look at how they're being paid currently and what their positional values are, these guys are into the tens of millions. When I'm talking about 10 million, 12 million, 13 million. Dallas is looking at this right now and is like, why should we play in free agency when we can have a program that finds Brock Hoffman, that finds Rico Dowdle, that finds Carl Lawson, where we're getting $14 million of value out of Carl Lawson for $1.1 million.
Yeah, it's a good.
I mean, I'm interested in what you think about that because if you look at it, they're getting well over $12 million of value, positional value, bought from Eric Kendricks, who is a $3 million a year player.
Yeah,
I'm starting to get an understanding of why they're doing what they're doing.
I would say if they leaned into that, that would be a little dangerous. So they had Brock Hoffman here for a couple of years.
TJ Bass?
They had a coach. Yeah, no, I'm saying they had a coach who lobbied for Hoffman, and they still wouldn't put him on the field over the rookie who had some struggles along the way. So when that happens and he comes in and he plays well, it's like, did you know or did you get fortunate? Carl Lawson.
They did it with Pollard.
Yeah,
I mean, remember I asked Jerry Jones that question. He got mad at me asking about wasting Pollard's career.
Yeah, Carl Lawson, the guy who's been really good for them. Carl Lawson was a throw it against the wall and see if it sticks August acquisition, where it's like, well, we got to figure something out. Yeah. And so it's like you're not going to always get lucky hitting on those guys. Now if they want to do that, that's fine. I would just say that's a tough philosophy to lean on. Is just we'll figure it out. Like that just seems like a difficult thing.
But does it give them ammunition going forward. Like,
they can. Okay, I'm sure they can lean on it. I'm sure they can.
Yeah, they're going to lean. They're going to lean. They're absolutely going to lean on that when they're telling us that, hey, listen, we're going to pay Lamb, we're going to pay Dak, and we're going to pay Micah. We've got to have Carl Lawson step up. We've got to have Eric Kendricks step up. We have to have Brock Hoffman step up.
Yeah, and Kendrick's another guy who gave you a break. You like that. You're only getting that because of the relationship and the opportunity that was there. So those are really tough things to lean on as consistently being able to bank on building that way.
But that's how. But in their mind,
yes,
it worked.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will think that. I just would say
absolutely.
That's
what I worry about. That's what I worry about. They are going to go forward thinking, well, damn, we've got 5 players that are positional value well over $10 million that we're getting out of this, and we're getting it for $7 million for these players.
Right. No, I think it's a good point. And it kind of blends in with, I think, a lot of larger stuff that I'm interested for your thoughts on. In fact, let's go ahead and reset really quickly. Remind people that they're listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. Brian, I mentioned your name to Jerry Jones in the interview the other day. I don't know if you heard it.
When you did. I heard that. Actually, I was driving around and I heard you mention, and he didn't. I appreciate the question you asked him. I appreciate you asking about the development part of it. Man, I thought you were going to ask Brian brought us and you were going to clip me on something. And
no.
It's like, Brian needs to worry about something other than the curtains or the roof or something like that.
No. This was a point that you had made recently that stuck with me for a couple weeks.
They develop They develop players for other teams. They're about to do it. They're about to do it with Golston. They're about to do it with Oso Digizua. They're about to do it with these guys.
Yeah, you just did it with Biotish. You can argue you did it with Dorrance Armstrong. This has happened recently. And so I think that when you look at that group of players, the 3 who really stand out right now is you may have developed them for other people. Chauncey Golston, Rico Dowdle, Oso Digizua. Mm-hmm. When you talk about that plan of just, we'll figure it out, how much do you think they look at that and go, well, we'll just replicate that. We're not going to pay market value for that. And do you think that there's a guy out of those 3 that would stand out to them that would say, all right, maybe we'll go above for that one?
I think there's 2. I don't want to envision this team, and I really need to see Carson. I thought Carson was going to play well enough at corner where it was going to make you think about playing Bland inside.
Me too.
At the nickel. And Jordan Lewis keeps saying, "No, you just keep your thoughts to yourself, Brian." Mm-hmm. You know. And Jordan Lewis has been outstanding for you. Even when you were bad defensively, Jordan Lewis was top shelf.
Yep.
Jordan Lewis makes a lot of sense just because of the nickel. He's thrived playing for Mike Zimmer. He really has thrived playing in this scheme. He's starting to play on the outside. Matter of fact, this week against Tampa with their situation with Evans, and I don't trust AO, and it's not because AO made a mistake on the punt block. I would play Lewis, Izzy, and Bland and go to work that way is what I would try and do. And so, and I would consider playing Lewis on the outside. That's for a whole nother day that we'll talk about that. But I think that Lewis, and I'm coming around because I asked Osa Odigizua not to be a college player. I needed him to play after week 13 when I mean a college player, he plays through the first 11 or 12 games, and then he plays in the bowl game, and then he's done.
Yeah. Gets fatigued.
He's playing better than a college player right now. That worries me a little bit. Are we playing better because the scheme is better for him? I think that Mike Zimmer's doing a great job of matching him and Micah Parsons up against bad players. And I mean that with respect. That Mike, the whole idea of football is get your best players on their worst players and take
matchup hunting is a thing. Yeah, you hunt matchups. That's a thing.
Hunt matchups. I think that did Dan Quinn hunt matchups? Sure, not to the extent that this guy is. And I think Osa's taking advantage of that. I think that Mike is taking advantage of that. I think there's some others. Golston taking advantage of that. Lawson taking advantage of that. So I feel like, though, if you ask me, I'm a little bit light at defensive tackle. I'm a little bit light at defensive tackle, and I think it scares me a little bit to pay Osa because it's really kind of been the 1 year. But, man, I would sure consider him and Jordan Lewis. Those would be my two really top priority guys right now.
Yeah, I think that those are guys that would be great to bring back. I mean, I tweeted out the stat this week. We're talking about over the last 7 weeks, Osa Odigizua leads the NFL in quarterback hits. He's one spot. He has one more quarterback hit than Myles Garrett. That's the type of production that you've been getting out of him recently. So he's been fantastic. And like you mentioned earlier, he tends to just kind of wear down at the end of the season, just kind of fatigue from play. And he plays so hard. He is one of the highest effort players on the football team, and I think it's just worn him down. This year, it's kind of been the reverse. He had a little bit of a slow start to the beginning of the season, and then he's picked it up and really finished strong. And so I think those are positives. Jordan Lewis been really great. Dowdle is somebody who I really like the potential of Dowdle here, and I've liked Dowdle. I remember we were sitting out there. It was one of those COVID practices, and we were sitting on that roof of the training room.
Yeah.
Watching the very first practice.
Actually, the weight room.
The weight room right there. We're watching practice for the first time in the COVID era, and we're all up there with our masks. And I was sitting a couple feet from you, 6 feet probably, 6 feet away from you, and we were watching Dowdle run to the edge. And it was just he was the guy that popped that day out of that rookie minicamp practice where it's like, well, who's he? Like he's different. Like just the way that he runs. And I do think that with the injury questions, the violent running style, there's obviously a long-term health question. But in terms of just how much better he's playing right now and the type of back that it looks like he can be, I think that's somebody that at least warrants consideration of, all right, how much might this cost us? And can we afford to lean into this guy being our number one back? Because if it's going to be $4 or $5 million a year, maybe that works for them. Maybe it's too expensive. Who knows? But I think that he's played himself into the discussion. Zach Moss in Cincinnati got 2 years, $8 million. Yeah. You're talking about a guy who same age, same sort of injury history, not nearly as productive in the opportunities he was given. I mean, you could make an argument that Dowdle has a case to say, well, Zach Moss is the beginning.
He's playing like if you start to talk about the value of the player, the value of the position. Again, this is overthecap.com. They've taken the grades from Pro Football Focus. If you hate both organizations, then probably not for you. But it's a fascinating study. He's playing like a $12 million a year player. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's playing like he makes $1.1 million, $1.2 million, and he's playing like a $12 million a year player for what you're getting from him. So all of a sudden you're thinking, well, okay, he's probably not going to get $12 million, but can he get $6 million? Can he get $7 million? That's where I think if I'm Dallas, I kind of feel like that to me right now, what I've seen in the draft so far, the running back position might stretch a little further than maybe what you might have at linebacker. I haven't seen all the players, but the initial look that maybe where you're picking there in the second and third rounds, there's a possibility that you could probably grab a running back there if they want to go that route and not have to pay the $7 million or $6 million for Rico Dowdle. I think he's more than earned it, but this team might have other ideas.
Here's a broad question, which after the game, I'm always writing up just different storylines or angles of like, what questions are we asking about this team, or what do we need to reflect on about this team after the game? And one of these, I put one of these in my notes after the game on Sunday, Brian, and I want to get your thoughts on it. This is what I had written down. It said, is the fact that Dallas is playing better with injuries and, quote, worse players in the lineup evidence that the Cowboys are good at acquiring talent but bad at team building? They always have more Pro Bowlers than most of the league, give out record-breaking contracts, but doesn't that indicate that the Cowboys have no idea how to make their talent a team? And is that a problem of coaching not being able to make it fit, or a problem of the front office for not recognizing that cohesion might be a problem when acquiring these players? So have they done a good job of identifying where talent is and failing to make that a 53-man unit and a complete football team? Is that their biggest error right now? Is not talent acquisition. It's that you guys have not shown you know how to create a team and turn that talent into a team.
I think there's some things in coaching that have been a problem. I really do. And it's a low-hanging fruit. It's the easiest thing to do is to blame a coach.
Yeah.
You know, I think the tight end's improving. I give Linda Wells some credit for that. The wide receivers failing, that's, is that on our guy?
Robert Prince.
Because, Robert Prince. I mean, they needed that room to play better. And honestly, it hasn't. And maybe Tolbert's not good enough. Maybe Brooks is not good enough.
Real quick to that point, have you made up your mind on Tolbert? Because this weekend I did. I said Jalen
like
Tolbert can't play.
Yeah, I felt like he had the nice job of getting open in the touchdown catch. It's fine, good job. These wide receivers for the Dallas Cowboys, I need you to make more than one catch a game. I need you on third down to extend your hands with a contested ball and make a catch. I don't care if it's Cooper Rush, Dak Prescott, Joe Montana throwing the ball. I don't care who it is throwing the football. You've got to make plays. And they haven't. These as a group, and I'm not just singling out Tolbert, and you just did. I'm just saying as a group, they're not good enough. They're behind CeeDee Lamb, they're just not good enough. I feel like I've seen enough of Jalen Tolbert, and that was somebody who was a big fan of his coming out of school. It's just, man, you had a real opportunity to step up when Brandon Cooks went down, and you gave me 1 to 2 catches a game. And watching failure to finish a tough catch on third down, and then he had a bad penalty the other day. It's just like, all right, I think. I mean, you can be here, you can be on the roster. That's probably, but if you're telling me you're going to lean on Jalen Tolbert as part of your top 3 wide receivers, I'm going to say you don't have a very good wide receiver group. Can't do it. If you're, Jalen Tolbert needed to prove to me that he could be the 2 going into 2025. No, you're going to.
I don't think he's even proved he can be a 3.
You might have to go out and draft Luther Burden from Missouri or one of these other wide receivers. I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to get McMillan from Arizona in this mix, but Luther Burden will be there for sure as far as a guy that you can go get that will go get the football and go make plays for you.
Yeah, I think honestly, I've seen more as a receiver, and I never thought I would have said this. Thought he was too small. I think I've seen more as a receiver from Kevontae Turpin as an option moving forward than Tolbert. I think I've seen more from Brooks as a receiver moving forward because Brooks has had some issues with consistency at times. But if you talk about a guy who battles and then made a fantastic catch in the end zone the other day, had a big time tough catch, 40-yarder down the field before halftime against Washington. That's somebody who has stepped up in big moments and had big plays. And I think there's still something there to develop. Whereas Jalen Tolbert, I think we've just kind of seen that's kind of what it is. You are listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, it's time for our Dean Julia Love the Star mailbag. We're returning things over to our dear, sweet listeners, get their thoughts, their comments, their questions, talk about what they want to talk about. And this is actually a good transition point because we just finished up talking about Jalen Tolbert and receivers. This question from Jake is wide receiver 2 the biggest need going into next season, assuming Osa somehow returns?
Yeah, but let's be honest. There's a lot of needs on this football team. You're going to need linebackers. You're going to need corners. You're going to need receivers. You're potentially going to need a running back. You're potentially going to need defensive tackles. He said if Osa returns, you're going to edges. I'd even consider looking at safeties. I do not think there's a position. Now, quarterback's a whole nother thing, and maybe some people will fight me and argue with me about that quarterback is a need here, but it's not going to happen. I am open to any position you're willing to take, and it almost sets up like the best player available on your board bit. If you take it off now, depending on what you think about TJ Bass, Brock Hoffman, guys like that, we've seen what. We've seen Awesome Richards play a little bit. Depending on what you think about those guys, I just feel like that to me, there's an argument for any position on this board that you could take. And I'm not saying that to be cute or, as Jerry would say, try it or all that stuff.
Right.
I honestly believe that you could draft this thing and it's just not off needs. You could just say best player, best player, best player, and it would probably fit for what the Dallas Cowboys need. It probably would fit what they're doing. So I can't just sit there and just say, okay, you got to go get. Because if you're picking 13th, 14th, 15th, fine. The best player, whoever's on that board at that time, would probably be a great fit for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think there's some there you could very well be looking at the best player you could be staring at when you get to your pick in the first round, depending on if they finish in this middle part of the first round. It might be a receiver. It very well could be.
Absolutely. Like I said, Luther Burton from
Missouri
is a really, really good example of that.
Now, I do think it's going to be important. You better trust
the kid from Ohio State. The kid from Ohio State's another one that you might be very similar, kind of a situation with him.
You better trust. I'll say this about Burden. I like Burden. I think you better trust whoever you got developing your wide receivers if you're going to pick Burden, because I think that's somebody who's going to. There are some questions about how much more he progressed this last season after a lot of people were expecting big things from him, and because he is such I think one of the harder things to project at the next level, to develop at the next level, is the guy who is the yards after catch, tough.
Take Ibuka from Ohio State.
Sure.
Take him. The same kind of player. I mean, a veteran, a guy that's played in a lot of huge games, can go get the football. There are going to be guys. If you don't like Burden, like I said,
no, I like Burden. I just want to make sure if I'm taking Burden, I want to make sure that I like my receiver coach that I've got.
Oh no, there's no question. Both these guys though run after catch, go get the football. Ibuka, he's played. He has played in some huge games and had success. So, if you have some questions about Burden, if there's some questions there, that you need to answer, that kid at Ohio State's a clean player.
Yep.
He is a clean player.
Absolutely. Next question here from Mark. Mark's asking, why is there the suggestion to remove play calling from Mike McCarthy and bring him back in 2025 as a walk-around head coach? Isn't the problem with the offensive system as a whole and not just play calling? I'll lead off here first, Brian. I think that they were running Kellen Moore's offense up until last year. When Mike McCarthy was the walk-around head coach, it wasn't Mike McCarthy's offense. So I think that if you're talking about bringing in a new offensive coordinator, it's not going to be Mike McCarthy's offense that then somebody else is just calling. And I think that's the condition on if he comes back. If he comes back, that's the conditions. You're not going to get it. In fact, I'm going to throw this out to you, Brian. Could you envision a scenario where they say, Mike, you're coming back. Mm-hmm. You're not calling plays.
Sure.
We're hiring an offensive coordinator. You do not get to pick the offensive coordinator. Your offensive coordinator is Jason Witten, and you are going to train him.
Wow. I think
Did you see that?
I see Jason Witten is going to get a head coaching. He's going to get a head coaching opportunity here, or an interview. Maybe he won't.
I don't disagree. So if they decide to retain McCarthy, do they say, "Hey, you know what? We need a couple years for him to start to develop, and you're going to oversee it"?
If I was Mike McCarthy, I wouldn't agree to that.
Then you're fired.
I'd walk. Yeah. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Because you're training your replacement in all likelihood.
I'm not interested in doing that. If I'm Mike McCarthy, I think you bring up good points. Were you the one that brought up that does Mike McCarthy even want to be here?
Oh yeah, I brought that up today.
Do we have a post game?
We're talking about Does there reach a point where he's just like, I'm tired of this?
Yeah. Mike McCarthy. Nobody's taking his side of the thing here. He might be like, damn it, I don't want to be here anymore. It's
similar to what was suggested recently from Bruce Feldman with Ryan Day at Ohio State. Yeah. Where it's like everybody keeps asking, does Ohio State want him back? Does Ryan Day just reach a point of saying, I don't want to be back. I don't want to be back around all this if there's all these questions about it. But I did. In fact, I'll throw you this. Which do you think is more likely? McCarthy as head coach with Witten as this is your offensive coordinator. You're taking him and we're developing him. or Mike Zimmer is hired as head coach? Which do you think is more likely?
Mike Zimmer is the head coach.
All right. Solid. I can take that.
I mean, I just don't think. I think Witten really wants to continue to be a head coach. And
I think it would be brought in with the idea of like, hey, you're going to. This is how we're going to just start getting you some preparation for this.
If he wants to take the OC job,
similar to when Garrett was brought in with Wade Phillips.
Sure, I would absolutely, but I'd make sure I'm going to have to get a staff around him of guys that, But you say McCarthy, you're going to train him. That's McCarthy's offense, isn't it?
Or not necessarily. I'll say this. Not train necessarily. I just mean you're going to oversee and you're going to run the head coaching stuff while we let Jason get his legs under him as an offensive coordinator. And you're going to be here.
I don't see Mike McCarthy agreeing to that, and I see Mike McCarthy leaving if that's the case.
It'd be interesting.
That's what I would think. I don't think it's not like Mike McCarthy. I don't think he needs the money. So I mean,
he seems like he needs football though, and I don't know that he gets another job.
Yeah, but okay, go coach Pitt Panthers or something like that.
I'll tell you this: I think he'd actually be a really good college coach. I think Mike McCarthy.
I don't disagree.
I think Mike McCarthy in a living room pitching families on why their kid needs to come to Pitt.
Let me tell you what, to get the team to Sunday the way he does, it's impressive. And that short week stuff ain't no just, hey, oh, wow, I get lucky. No, he's got things figured out that way. He really, really does.
And I think he was more comfortable in Green Bay. A lot of times college jobs operate more like Green Bay where it's a community thing and you don't feel the same sort of pressure.
What's keeping him from going to getting the Wisconsin job? I know that they got that guy from Cincinnati up there. I mean, I get it. But
sure.
What's keeping him from getting a job in college? I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Other than just his own desire, I guess.
Exactly.
Question from Joshua here. I think this is kind of an interesting one because you get to pick A or B, Brian.
Okay, B.
A, Mike Vrabel as head coach with Josh McDaniels as your offensive coordinator, or Mike McCarthy back as head coach and play caller with Mike Zimmer as your DC.
I want nothing to do with McDaniels.
Me too. Really as much as I want to reset things at head coach right now, give me McCarthy and Zimmer over bringing Josh McDaniels anywhere near this building.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think we're both in lockstep there. Look at that. And then last question here. Let's go to Chandler. Chandler Harrell asks, does the recent O-line play reduce the need of using an early pick in the draft on the line?
No.
Is BB playing guard the rest of the year, a realistic option to get a judge on next year? In fact, that's a good.
I would play him at guard. I would play him at guard these last 3 games.
How have you graded Hoffman at center versus guard?
I think Hoffman's been okay, and at guard, I mean, he's tough. They've run the ball really well either spot he's playing. I'd play BB there just because. Think of the next 3 opponents. Tampa,
playoff team,
Philly, Washington. Yep. All teams that have big-time defensive tackle guys, right? Big inside guys. Why not give BB the opportunity to see him coming off the football against those dudes one-on-one with him not having to snap the ball?
So I don't think it's a bad idea. And I think that's something, I bet that is a discussion they have this offseason of, do we want Hoffman at center and BB at guard, or Hoffman at guard and BB at center? Or maybe Bass at guard.
Let me tell you what, though. There's some of these tackles in this draft so far, Bobby, that I've looked at are projecting more to guard than they are tackle.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can make an argument the top 3 tackles all could be guards potentially.
No question. Yeah.
So it's definitely a question. All right, that does it for us here today on Love of the Star podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back with a Tampa Bay preview a little bit later this week. For Brian Broaddus, I'm Bobby Belt. We'll talk to you guys again later. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.